I'm Cynthia Rowland, and this is episode 156 of EO Radio Show. Today we are going to talk about proposed changes to the filing process requirements for charities that are required to register with the California Registry of Charities and Fundraisers. One might think that this episode will be of interest only to California-based charities, but that would be wrong. All charitable organizations that solicit California residents for donations should take note. Currently, about 110,000 such organizations file with the California Registry. These proposed changes apply to both the initial registration and annual renewal forms filed by California charities. The proposed rulemaking also covers professional fundraisers, raffle fundraisers, and nonprofit schools. All organizations affected by this proposed rulemaking will have to change their filing process to an online approach rather than using paper documents and paper checks. Welcome to the EO Radio Show, your nonprofit legal resource. Brought to you by the Exempt Organizations Group at Farella, Braun & Martel. My name is Cynthia Rowland, and I'm a partner at Farella. I'm a business and tax lawyer with more than 30 years of experience advising clients on nonprofit and charity law. Through this podcast, our lawyers and guests will discuss a range of legal and business issues impacting the nonprofit world because we understand you work hard every day to make your community a better place to live and do business. Many of our programs focus on the basics, and at times we'll do a deep dive into narrow and complicated legal issues. Again, welcome to the EO Radio Show. We're glad you're here.
This is Joe. After recording this episode, the California Attorney General's Office did open a pilot program with the option to use the new system we discussed in this episode. Do please listen and enjoy. Thanks.
Today I'm joined by my colleague Joe Hilliard, a senior paralegal here at Farella. Regular listeners know that Joe specializes in formation and compliance matters for all manner of entities, and in particular, he helps me with charities that are exempt under Internal Revenue Code Section 501c3. Welcome back, Joe.
Hey, it's good to be here again.
So to set the stage here for our conversation, on May 1st of 2026, the California Department of Justice published a notice of proposed rulemaking concerning the Registry of Charities and Fundraisers and its online filing service regulations. These proposed changes will apply to charities, professional fundraisers, raffle fundraisers, and certain nonprofit schools. Our focus today is the effect of these new rules on the charities, although listeners interested in learning more about the specifics applicable to fundraisers and other filers can find links to the full text of the proposed rules for those types of organizations in the show notes. So a little background for what the existing laws and regulations are that apply in this area. In California, the Supervision of Trustees and Fundraisers for Charitable Purposes Act provides that the AG in California has the enforcement and supervisory powers over all charitable corporations, unincorporated associations, charitable trustees, and other entities holding property for charitable purposes. They also regulate commercial fundraisers for charitable purposes, fundraising counsel for charitable purposes, commercial co-venturers, and charitable fundraising platforms. The Act established this registry, which is administered by the Department of Justice. So with that little bit of background, Joe, do you want to dive in a little bit on what the current filing process looks like?
So there are really two big documents that every foundation, every charity needs to put into place with the Department of Justice, the Attorney General's Office here. We call them the AG for short, so I'll call it the AG going forward. And the first one is the CT1, which is your initial filing when you first, now that you've got your 501c3 status from the IRS, you need to file here in the state if you're doing business here in the state, if you're registered here in the state. And that's due to the AG's office here within 30 days of your funding. That's the rule. So right now, what we look at is it's a 3-page form. We'll include a complete list of your officers and directors, a brief description of the activities of your organization. Again, we usually dupe this out of your 1023 to keep it the same. The date exact when you got your funding in California, your fiscal year information, whether you're calendar or if you're one of those that does it on June 30th, confirmation of your IRS status, and with that you'll have to attach a copy of your 1023 and your determination letter both. And then you attest on whether you have DBAs, whether you are registered in other states, whether you have related organizations or you're a supporting organization. You have to attest that there are no fraud convictions of any of your directors or officers, to show how your directors or officers may be related. If they're a married couple, if you have a married couple as directors, if you have brothers and sisters, father and children, mother and children. These are very common a lot with our private foundations where it's coming through that. So the state really wants to understand that. Then with that, you attach your formation documents, if you're just a California one, you're just your California articles. If you're, say, a Delaware, as we often talk about, then your Delaware formation and your registration in California. As I noted, a copy of your IRS 1023, your termination letter, and then we would FedEx mail file that with a signature, with an original signature on it, and your $50 check. It takes approximately 3 months for the AG to note that the approval of your CT1 and for it to show up on their system, on their online system.
Okay, so that's the initial filing for charities. And I just want to restate for listeners, we're only talking today about the effect of this rulemaking on charities. There's other parts of this rulemaking, like I mentioned at the beginning, that apply to fundraisers, commercial fundraisers, and fundraising platforms and so forth. But we're only talking about charities. So back to Joe, after we do our initial filing, there's an annual filing. And what does that look like for charities?
Then after that, you have an annual filing due, and it's due basically at the same time as your IRS 990, however, tied to the 5 months after your year end. It's the form RRF1. It's a one-page form. This actually can be uploaded right now, although we still generally recommend that they be mail filed because the system has been kind of wonky. You have a copy of your IRS 990. It pulls out a couple, 4 or 5 simple numbers out of your 990 on the top level of it. Then if you are under the threshold of filing, if you're just filing a 990 and a postcard, you need to file a CTR1 form with this, which again shows your specifics of some of where your money's going if you're under that 50,000 threshold. And then on the opposite side, if you go over a $2 million threshold, which I believe we've talked about several times, then you will need to have an audit done as well. And so same thing, you've got a form, you've got your 990, the payment goes up and down. The minimum is $25 up to $200, depending on how much net income you've had over the year. And then same thing as with the CT1, you'll see it approximately 3 months later on their website as approved on the system that they've got. It'll say it'll keep you as current. If you've got it in on time, you'll see current-filing, so that they recognize that your filing is there and they're reviewing it. And so they do keep that part of the website up. But again, it's really 3 months for both of these documents before you see an actual final determination of one way or the other on these, both when you're initially approved and then when you go back to being current.
Yeah, and so a couple of notes on that. They do seem to be fairly lenient on the audit for organizations that have revenue of $2 million or more. If your audit is in process at the time that you file the RRF1, you could still check the box that says you're getting an audit if it's in process. I don't think there's a penalty if the audit's not attached. But still, the current process requires attaching that 990. They're also fairly lenient about not showing the organizations as delinquent until they're very far past the extended due date. But once it does show as delinquent, it takes a while to get it.
They will send you letters into your mailing address indicating that you're getting close to delinquency, and they will also post those delinquency notices, pending delinquency notices, on their website as well. There's a long, if you go into the search prompt on theirs, and again, we'll put that in the show notes there, the top level where the search is on the AG site. They are very good at posting all their correspondence that they send you there as well. So we've had ones where we're not getting mail and we look at it and we say, oh yeah, they've actually posted that the address came back as no good, as unable to deliver. And they will put those notices even in the public record so you can see and find out exactly what's going on that side.
So that's the world as we know it today. The Department of Justice has proposed these regulations because they think that mandating online filing will allow the registry to eliminate the manual, time-consuming document management tasks necessitated by these paper filings. They spell out, the things like opening envelopes, removing staples, scanning documents, typing the data into the database. All those things take a lot of time, as we all know, in managing our own paper flow. So the Department of Justice wants to make this all happen online. The Department of Justice thinks that the registry's new online filing service will also prevent registrants from making errors in the filing process. The online filing service will ask registrants initial questions, and based on those answers, it will guide them through the appropriate forms and fields within the forms. The idea is that this will not allow registrants to submit a form unless all the required information and documents are provided. The form is signed under penalty of perjury and the correct fee is paid. As a result, the registry thinks it'll receive a much smaller number of incomplete, inaccurate, or otherwise deficient filings and will therefore be able to process the filings it receives more quickly. This will be similar for the renewal filings. They anticipate that there will be fewer delinquency-causing errors, and the number of delinquent registrations should be substantially reduced. The registry currently responds to the paper filings with paper correspondence sent by mail, which is slow and subject to loss in transit, as Joe just mentioned. By contrast, under this online approach, the registry says that they will generally be able to respond by email to the online filings, so communications will be instantaneous. Well, we'll see about instantaneous, but that's their story. And more reliable. And this should contribute to faster and more efficient service by the registry. The Department of Justice believes that these new regs will benefit the registrants without additional cost or burden because the registrants will no longer have to deal with paper, printer, ink, postage, and delivery fees, and so on. So with that, those are the general idea of the benefits. But let's talk through the gist of the proposal, Joe. You want to talk a little bit about the comment process and the big ticket items and how this will likely play out, based on what we've seen in other states.
So, I mean, the big ticket item obviously is they did this at the beginning of May and gave till June 16th. So they gave you like 6 weeks to comment, which is not a long window when you think about it for any procedural thing, let alone a government procedure. On the top level, so it's interesting. It kind of mirrors what you see when you file your IRS 1023, where you have a form where you go through and the way they've described it, the same thing for clients that have done their 1023s, or if you've just seen the printed one, it goes through, it has a screen where you put all your officers and you populate it. And if there's a mistake, it gives you a red beep and it will not let you go to the next screen until you've done that. So I'm presuming when they're talking about this is what that it will guide you through it and make sure there's no errors, I'm presuming that's going to be very similar to the system that they have in mind. Which again makes sense. A lot of what we talked about just on the paper form mirrors what you do on a 1023. That's something we see a lot when on the smaller side where we've talked to, for those of you who've listened to all of our formation ones know that that's how most of the state Secretary of States work. The California Secretary of State does give you the option to do either or, but basically you do one step, two step. Some other states' AG systems do this. We have clients that are registered in Florida, for instance, and the Florida one is also like this, where you go through and you punch in the numbers, although theirs doesn't give you an automatic ding on that. You have to wait still to get some back. So I'm curious how this will work, especially on the RRF ones in terms of like the numbers to make sure you have your math right. How it's going to, in these age of AI, does that mean that is something going to be reading the 990 when you upload it to make sure your numbers are correct? I have some concerns about that, how it's going to say, yes, you've done it right. Yes, you haven't in the background. But again, a lot of it is not dissimilar to what we've seen at the top level on the federal. I think that's their big mimic level, and other states have similar systems. Not that I'm an old and I'm a Luddite, but I do prefer to have paper. Sometimes I'd like to have the option, and they're doing away with that option entirely. So that kind of concerns me. But again, we've seen this with the IRS. You can't file a 1023 in the mail anymore either. The other side, and this is something that Cynthia already picked up on, is like they say, oh, your contact will be instantaneous. So let's talk about something we've talked about, I think the last podcast we did, where we talked about dissolutions and getting waivers from the Attorney General's office to dissolve your entities. They have an email address. We email those all the time, a package with that. Our turnaround time is at current in May of 2026. 8 to 9 months. Simple withdrawal saying, hey, this is it. We have no money. This is who we gave all our money to. Literally like a 5-page document with 2 attachments. Ones we filed in August of September of last year are just coming back with the email responses saying, yes, here it is. Here's your letter. I'm a little leery of saying, oh, this is going to make it better, because the mail filings that I do are faster than the email filings I do with the Attorney General right now. So this is my 2026 cynicism coming through here on that part of their excitement.
So they also say that the online filing won't be a burden or a cost for the filers. I take it it's a web-based thing. There's no special software or.
That's correct. They've noted that it's going to be run through on the front screen of their website, which again, the RF ones, you can upload them that way right now. So there is that ability to do that right now. So I presume it's going to be something similar to that. Probably an interface, again, like what we see with the IRS or what we see with the California Secretary of State, where you're going to have to create an account and log in. I presume that it's going to be done like that so that they can trace it back as well. So there's not just a, ad hoc people opening things and closing things. I think they'll probably have an account set up, although that was not mentioned either. But no, with them saying there's no software needed, I presume it's going to be their web-based prompt then to go through it and walk through it. They have as AGs, as government offices go, their website isn't too bad. It's, like I said, their search engine is real easy to use. It's very user friendly. They have a lot of links to where they've set up a YouTube channel, much like we have, where you can do prompts to how you would file the CT1 manually right now. So I presume they're going to update those as they go through, but those are real on the front page. They have, here's a video to watch. Here's a YouTube tutorial to watch to know exactly how to file this. So on that side, I feel confident on their IT side, they have people that can put this together really quickly, keep their website moving easily to get these things through. So on that side, I feel fairly confident that it will be an easy to use, or if it doesn't seem easy to use, there will be an easy way to find out how to use it. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good. And do you think, we've talked about this, you and I, from time to time, where these filing services have one login for the organization, and it becomes a bit of a challenge if, say, if it's tied personally to an officer at the foundation that needs to sign it under penalty of perjury, right? So is this going to be something that'll have to be done by a client officer through the entire process with their own unique login? And you don't necessarily need to have the answer, but it's a question I might have. I don't know if it says it in the proposed rulemaking, but how are they going to know who it is that signs under penalty of perjury?
That I don't know. It said it will ask questions. It said that it did say on there that the form is signed under penalty of perjury and the correct fee is paid at the end of it. That's so. And we're back to they haven't discussed what we talked about with the IRS 1023. At the end, we have a PDF which has a signature of the officer. It has their articles of incorporation. It has their bylaws that we attach. And that's what's going to be here. It talks about that too, because you still have to attach your determination letter, your 1023, same thing, your articles and your bylaws. Without them saying it, I have a feeling that's how the perjury is going to be, is it's going to be still where we print out a signature page and attach it. Again, unlike the IRS, the AG has allowed DocuSign signatures on CT1s. Since the onset of COVID, they have allowed electronic signatures and specifically DocuSigns. I mean, we regularly, when we file CT1s for our clients, we get those DocuSigned and attach that as the signature page when we mail file them. So
another thing that often goes wrong with the mail filings is that darn paper check. Switching to ACH, I think for the vast majority of clients will be preferable, although there are some clients that don't like to give out bank information for any purpose. I gather there's no option here. It sounds like it will be online only, and you won't be able to mail a check.
That was where it was. But again, one would hope if we've reached this age again, you've already got your 1023, and your 1023 is the same way. It has to be either an ACH or a credit card through that. So again, they mentioned specifically ACH. They did not mention credit card options here. I would hope that's one of them, that it's not just tied to an ACH, that you'll be able to use credit cards as well, because that's, like you said, that has a different comfort level for a lot of people, and it's an easier number to pop in that doesn't tie back to everything. So if you're commenting before June 16, 2026, all of you listening, please put that in as one of the things. Make sure that you can use a credit card and not just an ACH.
So is there anything in the proposed rulemaking about changes to the form itself? I thought I saw
there were a couple. So the form is going to be revised. It's going to delete sections on California qualifications, because if you're doing this, then they're going to presume you're already qualified in some manner. There's going to be an update to how the DBA section works. They're going to set up, because it will be set up email beyond just a physical address contact information. It's going to ask for email contact information back to get this. And one of the biggers will be in the financial section. It says, quote, existing questions about whether and when the organization received assets and from where are rephrased without substantive change to ask more clearly whether assets have been received in California, in or from California, and if so, when. So they're trying to get that more streamlined, how the money's coming in. And then also the officer's director's ID section is going to be more robust. Questions are added requiring identification of each person's precise role, whether they're a director, officer, or a trustee, which will make that data trackable and thus facilitate enforcement by the Department of laws protecting charities and charitable assets. With this change, it will be able to run near-instant reports showing the identities of persons occupying fiduciary and or other critical roles with a charity and of persons occupying such roles within multiple charities. And the bigger part after that, all these officers and directors will need to have an email included.
Interesting. So one would think those email addresses should, well, 2 comments on this. You'll want the email that's associated with the address for responses from the AG's office. I think you may not want that tied to a particular individual because individuals come and go. And we've had that experience lately with some accounts set up for clients where the person used their personal email address or their business email address that's not the charity. And then that person retires or goes away and the notices don't reach anyone at the organization. So some thought will have to go into what email address the notices go to. And then for the directors, officers, and trustees for their individual contact information, it sounds like they may well want to have separate emails associated with the charity's domain for this purpose so that these communications don't give out a personal email address, which is going to be public, right?
Yes, that we are presuming that all of this information in the background will be public. Yes. Again, that's something that needs to be clarified. But yes, given the original, how they worked originally, yes, the CT1 as a whole was simply just uploaded to the AG system with all of its attachments so it could be seen by the public. So there wasn't a lot of clarity on whether that information was going to be, in the background or if it was going to be public. But I think absent them saying it's private, we would have to presume that it's public as all CT1 information has been public going forward.
Yeah. Interesting. Anything else that's not discussed in the proposed rulemaking that raises a question in your mind?
We hit the big ones. We hit the payments, we hit the publicity of officers, and we hit the timing, the concern about what the timing actually means. Like I said, this is going to be faster, and yet they didn't say how it's going to be faster. And again, the part of their system that is on email right now is markedly slower than stuff we do by the mail. So I think those are the 3 big points that I'm most concerned about that they did not talk about.
Yeah, well, maybe the people who've been pulling the staples and scanning the paper documents will now be responding to emails. We'll see how that goes. Thank you, Joe. We'll put in the show notes links to our relevant prior podcast episodes on these sorts of things. And we'll update listeners when we see what happens with the final regs. So with that, Joe, thanks so much for helping me with this today. It's been good talking
for sure. It's good to be on again.
So with that, be sure to check the show notes for these links. I'm Cynthia Rowland, and you've been listening to EO Radio Show, your nonprofit legal resource, brought to you by the Exempt Organizations Group at Farella, Braun & Martel. If you have suggestions for topics you would like for us to discuss, please email us at eoradioshow@fbm.com. That's eoradioshow@fbm.com. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, make a difference.